Hello, I'm Peter Alcock with another in our U3A video series for U3A. And today I welcome Peter Flanigan, who's kindly agreed to talk about his very interesting life and how it led to his active involvement in U3A spanning over 20 years. Peter, thank you for your time and your patience in getting this done.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. I know you have a busy life. I thought, can we start with some early memories that might have shaped who you are?
Well, I was born of the eldest of five children to a man who was a teacher at that stage. He had worked on farms, but he went teaching, and then he married, and we were moving around the wheat belt, basically, to different schools, and so I always had my father as the teacher, and it wasn't until just after the war he decided that he wanted to go farming again, or he and Mum decided, and they got the chance to lease a property at Corrigan, and that's where we moved when I was eight years old. So that seems to be the main focus of my memories is Corrigan. I mean, I do have earlier ones, but Corrigan, we stayed in the one place for a few years, and that was significant.
In U3A, you're known to be something of a bit of a man for all seasons, so I've got to say, I've heard that from many people. And you have interests covering a range from all the arts, the sciences, maths and so on, and gardening. Is this something you've always felt part of you?
I've always had a wide range of interests, yeah. One of the things that my parents did when I was quite young, and this would have been during the war, was to acquire a set of encyclopedias called the Children's Encyclopedia, Arthur Mee. And I used to devour sections of that, not the whole thing, but there were two particular ones that I was interested in. One section was on science, and one section was on stories, literature, and those two are the things that I was most interested in. So that gave the two sides of my interests, I suppose.
You've also had a long association with theatre, because in recent years you've done a lot of theatrical work, both at U3A and the Stirling Players. What you have a particular fond association, an early association with the theatre?
Well, I didn't do a lot in my early years. I can remember one occasion when some cousins came to stay, and there were five of us and two of them, so we had 7 people, and we made up a play based on the magic pudding. And of course we had the audience of mums and dads, and the youngest member of the family was about 3. He was the magic pudding. And we performed a couple of little scenes from that to great acclaim. And that's the earliest one. And then when I went away to boarding school when I was 12, turning 13, I did get involved in a play at an early stage. It was an Agatha Christie, now called, and then there were none, had a different name back then. And my voice hadn't broken, and so I was, it being an all-boys school, they had to have some female parts, so I was allocated the part of Mrs. Rogers, the housekeeper. It wasn't a very exciting part, and she got murdered in the second scene, I think. So that didn't give me a great start, but I do remember later in my school career helping out with the lighting.
And at university you're involved in theatre there?
I got involved with the University Review Society. Not the Dramatic Society. In fact, they were sort of, looked on as a bit odd by most of us. But the review, that was mainstream, and that was putting on shows, song, dance, satirical sketches, and so forth.
And you're a bit of a star tennis player, I hear, in your day.
Well, I did play tennis, yeah. Dad and Mum played tennis, and they built a court at home, pretty rough, bush court, but it was a court, marked out properly with a net and all the rest of it. By the time I went away to school, I was playing to a reasonable standard and sort of got into the school team. Went on to play in the schoolboys championships in my last year, which I managed to win the title there. So that was probably the peak of my tennis playing career.
You had a long teaching career, Peter. You taught science, maths and English. That would seem a little unusual. Or was that part of a plan as well?
Well, no, there was no plan. Actually started off doing a science degree without nominating a major. In the end, I majored in maths, but I'd done physics and chem along the way up to the second year. And so I was science and maths when I first started.
Well, I do recall that you managed to get me through by leaving maths when you came to Narrogin. So.
Well, yeah, that was my first time at upper school maths when Harry Loudon went on leave and said, would you like to take over this class? And I thought,
just getting back to the play production, Peter, I came across this play production book that you've written laboriously, beautifully done. And was that connected with the Stirling Players?
Not directly, although I was with the Stirling Players when I wrote that. It came from the TAFE Extension Service. And there was a man working there named Peter Thompson. He was very interested in getting a course going with the TAFE Extension Service, and he knew I wrote plays and had been directing in plays for a long time. So he came to see me and said, would you like to write this handbook and we'll publish some of your plays to go with it. It was a sort of package deal. It took me about a year, I think, to write it, and I got a little bit of help from one or two other people.
So this will be your one-act plays that you...
Yeah, well, some other plays. I've written about 15 or 20 one-act plays, I suppose, and there's 7 in there. And I did that just after I retired. I put those together and we had it printed.
On the topic then of teaching and learning, you've taught teenagers and now in U3A. Do you see a difference in the way, say, teenagers learn and, say, seniors like us learn?
Yeah, there's a fair bit of difference, really. Start with the U3A people come along voluntarily and they want to learn, and generally speaking they do. Whereas the teenagers or any kids at school, because they have to be at school, and some of them are keener than others, of course. But if you walk into any high school class and start talking, and you're supposed to be a maths lesson, but they get you talking about the football or something like that. Oh, that's great! We don't have to do any work today. Just keep him talking.
And you've been the editor of the U3A network for quite a number of years, but this is only one of many news sheets you've been involved with. And I came across the old Hammersley Gazette, which I believe you started way back in the 70s. Well,
yeah, I got involved in newsletters of various sorts, even from back. We used to have a science magazine when I was at UWA, and I was editing that for a while. And then any clubs I belonged to, like tennis clubs or rep clubs, I quite often got involved in putting a few items of news together, and so. And then I was at Narrogin for 3 years, and then we came here. I was married with one kid and one on the way at that stage. Suddenly we're in a new suburb. Nobody knows anybody. There's very few, clubs and societies have been set up, and it all seems as if we really need something. And in a country town, the local paper is the centre of all information. It was then, and probably still is. And I started to think, well, maybe we could get this into something a bit bigger, and it took off. A lot of people were interested in reading about what was going on, and they wanted to contribute. We got contributions from sporting groups, and we had a classified ads section and so forth. And it grew from 4 pages up to 6 to 8. I think in the 4th year I got up to 12.
Now you've taken leadership roles at North Coast U3A and at the Council of U3A and also the State Network over, what, about more than 20 years over that time. What would you say for people entering their 3rd age now and want to start out in U3A?
Somebody who was joining for the first time, I'd say the first thing you're going to say is, oh, they're all old people here. And this is something you could say, well, that's not for me. But on the other hand, if you just stick around for a while, you find that the age difference starts to become less important. And if you make a contribution yourself in one way or another, then you can be very much a part of the group. So I would recommend it to anybody who's enjoys intellectual curiosity of finding out about things, and or wants to get into a course where they learn things, or just wants to meet interesting people.
Because in these days of social media and instant communication, there's probably a difference in the way we approach the publicity, do you think, than what we did, say, 10 years ago even?
Well, yeah, I mean, people go online to look for things now, and so you have a website and all that sort of thing, but I don't know how many people come that way. I think the old word of mouth is still the best way, and face-to-face activities. So it hasn't changed as much as, not for older people anyway. Maybe younger people do things quite differently. But I think for U3A people, it's still much the same as it was.
Now you and Rosemary are also passionate gardeners, and I believe you got involved in the community garden here, and you started that up just around
Well, I don't claim to have started it up, no, but I was involved from early on. Yes, we've got a big garden here because we've got 1,400 square metres block here, and a lot of it's planted with natives, which don't need too much, but they do need some. They do have to be pruned, and sometimes they die. And yeah. Anyway, yes, so I was interested in garden, and they actually were starting off with a group that didn't know a lot about gardening, strangely enough. They just felt the idea of a community garden was a good one. Stirling Council was quite amenable to the idea of doing that. So yes, I got involved in the first year. It's been a very successful thing. It's been going for getting on six years now, and a lot of people are very taken with it.
Wonder you had the time to do all these things, Peter. So
well, I allocate a couple of hours a week to that,
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Peter. It's been a real pleasure. You've been quite a mentor for me over the years, so real pleasure to have this chat. So.
Thank you very much, Peter. Enjoyed it.